People would be shocked. That's President Trump on his cordial meeting with New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Out with, he's a communist. In with, he could be great. South Carolina Congressman and Democratic heavyweight Jim Clyburn on his future in politics and the first 8 in South Carolina who made congressional history. It's been more than 20 years. I know you have been waiting for it. The new collegiate edition of Merriam-Webster's dictionary. We dive into word nerd mania. Hello, everyone. I'm Major Garrett in Washington. Welcome to The Takeout. Star power admires star power. It's true in sports, business, Hollywood, and politics. There's no better way to summarize the collegial, chummy, and at times, here, let me help you with that tough question, bon ami, of President Trump's press conference with New York Mayor-elect Zohran Mamdani. Before Mamdani won, Trump called him a communist. Mamdani has called Trump a fascist. That all disappeared today, or, more to the point, was set aside in the face of the reality of power and what to make of it.
I can tell you some of my views have changed, and we had discussions on some things. I'm not going to discuss what they were, but that I feel very confident that he can do a very good job. I think he is going to surprise some conservative people, actually. And some very liberal people, he won't surprise them because they already like him.
Mamdani is the incoming mayor. Trump is president who has faced some recent political setbacks and is bedeviled by sagging poll numbers on the economy and inflation. They both, in other words, need to circle the wagons on affordability. And they did so, weaving that issue into almost every answer.
Well, I actually told the president that, so much of the focus of our campaign has been on the cost of living crisis. And when we asked those New Yorkers who had voted for the president, when we saw an increase in his numbers in New York City, that came back to the same issue, cost of living, cost of living, cost of living.
Trump called Mamdani different, amazing, downplayed his status as a democratic socialist, at one point saying he doesn't care at all about political affiliations or parties. He said the two have the same ideas on housing, the cost of groceries, and public safety.
We had some interesting conversation, and some of his ideas really are the same ideas that I have. But a big thing on cost, the new word is affordability. Another word is just groceries. It's sort of an old-fashioned word, but it's very accurate. And they're coming down high. They were... we had, both of us, we had the highest inflation in the history of our country the last 4 years.
Trump even bestowed the ultimate compliment that Mamdani wants to and has a chance to, wait for it, make New York great again, adding, I expect to be helping him, not hurting him. For more on this I love New York moment in American presidential history, let me bring in our political director, Finn Gomez. Finn, great to have you here. Let me play some other sound.
Yeah.
Because this goes to where I started. Star power admires star power. This is the president talking about the rather large-sized press contingent there for Mamdani's arrival and everything that ensued. Watch.
The press has eaten this thing up. I've had a lot of meetings with the heads of major countries. Nobody cared. This meeting, that you people have gone crazy. Outside you have hundreds of people waiting. This is just a small little group. For some reason, the press has found this to be a very interesting meeting. The biggest people in the world, they come over from countries nobody cares. But they did care about this meeting, and it was a great meeting.
They cared about it because Mamdani has star power of his own.
It's absolutely right, Major. And I think this is a situation here where game respects game, right? These are two political athletes with key, special political skill sets here. And I think that they're respecting each other on that level. I think you saw that. Also, the parallels don't stop there. If you look at it, they were both anti-establishment candidates that came out of virtually nowhere, took on their parties, won in their respective races, and on the issue, as you noted, on the issue of affordability. And they also won with whom? What part of the demographic? Working class voters. There's areas there where there are parallels, and there's connective tissue there.
There's a horseshoe metaphor that is often overlooked about the 2016 campaign.
Sure.
You had the Trump supporters and the Bernie Sanders supporters, and the establishment Republican and Democrats at the bottom of that horseshoe. But at the top of that horseshoe, the Trump supporters and the Bernie Sanders supporters. President Trump referred to that with Mamdani standing next to him, because Mamdani, of course, very close to Bernie Sanders. Let's listen.
We were discussing when Bernie Sanders was out of the race, I picked up a lot of his votes, and people had no idea, because he was strong on not getting ripped off in trade and lots of the things that I've practiced and been very successful on. Tariffs, a lot of things. Bernie Sanders and I agreed on much more than people thought.
People overlook that about the Trump phenomenon, this populist core that is not necessarily Republican or Democrat, and that there are elements of either socialism or things that sound socialistic that found their way into the Trump coalition. And are now part of the Mamdani coalition.
Absolutely. And Mamdani even talked about those Trump supporters who voted for him in this race. Campaign. 1 out of 10, he said, because of affordability, because of the same issues that they're both populists. They do align on that level on so many of those economic issues, even though diametrically they're opposite on many other issues, of course. But even there was even that moment where he saved them from when he was asked about Mamdani's previous statements of calling the president a fascist. He even pat him on his hand and saved him from
I'm going to pat you on the arm because I'm going to stop you right there because we need to watch this. Watch it. Watch it.
And I want to clarify your answer to Stephen Nelson. He asked about your comment calling the president a fascist, and your answer was, both President Trump and I have been clear about our positions and our views. Are you affirming that you think President Trump is a fascist?
I've spoken about...
That's okay. You can just say yes.
Okay. All right.
Okay. It's easier. It's easier than explaining it. I don't mind.
Wow.
Finn, come on. I mean, what?
Yeah, I mean, like, I think this meeting, ahead of this meeting, it could have gone sideways. It could have gone a lot of different ways. This is one that yes, it was a potential likelihood, but seeing these moments, and it was frankly shocking and fascinating in a lot of ways. It also throws a wrench into the House Republicans' plans because they basically are trying to pin Mamdani as like the poster boy for the Democratic Party going into the midterms, right? Even Elise Stefanik, Elise Stefanik, who's
running for governor now in New York.
She's Republican congressman, close Trump ally, and called Mamdani a jihadist. Right?
The president was asked about that
specifically, and basically deflated that.
He said no. He's a rational man. He's a direct answer.
Very rational man. And thought he could be a good mayor. Like it's.
And this morning, the House Republican majority passed a resolution condemning socialism. A bunch of Democrats voted for it, and that has not been nullified as an issue. But this event takes some of the steam out of that, for sure.
Absolutely. Even talking to Democrats, they're very surprised by it.
Ben Gomez, as much as I love to spend time with you, I need to spend time with the former mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio, who's coming to us from beautiful Tucson, Arizona, where he's on and has been for more than a couple of hours on an extended nature hike. Mr. Mayor, it's great to see you. I don't know how much from the beautiful environs of Tucson you were able to absorb of the encounter between Mayor-elect Mamdani and the president, but what's your reaction?
It's fascinating. I think the first thing we have to recognize here is Donald Trump wanted this to be a huge spectacle to distract from all the attention on the Epstein files and all the other problems he's having on the economy, his poll numbers sinking. And he is a master showman. So, you could see when he got to that point about praising how many cameras were there. That's because it fits what he's trying to do in this moment. But the bigger phenomenon for New York City, I think Mamdani did the smart thing to reach out and ask for this meeting. I think his charm and his self-possession came through. He knew how to handle himself in the presence of Trump. Trump really didn't have a way of unnerving him. That fascist answer was a little interesting. I thought that was a great moment. But, in general, it's a good day for Mamdani. He held his own. And for Trump, it's really a sign of just grasping at straws at this point, just trying to find any way to get out of the box he's in.
So you were name-checked, Mr. Mayor. I don't know if you noticed that, but I want to play the soundbite for you from the president invoking your time as mayor of New York. Let's listen.
I love New York City. It's where I come from. I spent a lot of years there. Now I'm right here. We took a big setback with the mayor that we had, Dave de Blasio. I thought it was a tremendous setback for the city. I think this mayor can do some things that are going to be really great.
You want to address that, Mayor de Blasio?
It's fascinating. President Trump has talked incessantly about his feelings about my time as mayor. Look, we did pre-K for all in New York City. We had the most jobs ever in New York City's history. We brought down crime, but for some reason, he's a little obsessed, and it's ironic, especially because Mamdani has said he wants to emulate a lot of the things that I did as mayor. He's been very open about that. So, I think what Trump is going to find very quickly is that Mamdani, yes, he's very charming, very intelligent, but he's also a resolute progressive. He's going to take the same kind of policies I put in place and build upon them. And then Trump's going to have to decide whether he wants to keep praising someone who's actually putting the lie in effect to a lot of Trump's philosophy. I think Mamdani could, for the Republican Party, be a real thorn in their side because he's getting the Democrats back to our roots. I really believe this. He's getting us back to kitchen table issues, talk about prices, talk about people's everyday lives, talk with compassion and urgency. If Democrats do that, they win the midterms, period. And then Trump doesn't have the same presidency anymore. So I think he's going to have trouble being quite as warm towards Mamdani as Mamdani succeeds.
Mr. Mayor, you were recently quoted as saying when you were mayor, you, quote, often mistook good policy for good politics, a classic progressive error. In that context, What did you mean, and what advice does that convey to Mayor-elect Mamdani?
I talked about that particularly in the context of Joe Biden. This was a couple of years ago when I said that, because Biden had some tremendous policies that really did address the realities of everyday Americans' lives, but he didn't talk about it right, honestly. And, we said things like Bidenomics went right over people's head and also felt absolutely discordant with the pain and the challenges that they were dealing with. So the fact is, it's not enough to have great policies. The public is not looking at abstract economic indicators. They want to know, are you going to do something that reaches their lives directly? In our time, pre-K for all, for example, people felt the money back in their wallets because they got free childcare, free early child education for their kids. With Mamdani, things like fast and free buses, things like freezing the rent are going to have a huge impact on people's everyday lives. So it's not talking about these big abstract ideas, not talking about democracy, which was another huge mistake that Biden and Harris made. People didn't want to hear about quote unquote democracy when they couldn't pay the bills. I think Mamdani is actually taking the Democratic Party to school right now and showing us how to talk to people about the lives they're actually living.
Mr. Mayor, as you know, in New York, policing, race, and now a new issue, or maybe not a new issue, but a more elevated issue, anti-Semitism, is going to be a big part of what Mayor-elect Mamdani is going to face. He addressed right near the end of his encounter with President Trump the issue of anti-Semitism. I want to play that for you, get your reaction on this side.
I care very deeply about Jewish safety, and I look forward to rooting out anti-Semitism across the 5 boroughs and protecting Jewish New Yorkers and every New Yorker who calls the city home.
That was an issue in the campaign. Obviously, Mayor-elect Mamdani dealt with it enough to prevail. What's your advice on that score?
Just to be very aggressive, very assertive in addressing all forms of hate. It's partly about leadership, showing that we will not accept it in our city. That voice matters. The mayoral voice matters immensely in New York City. It's about educating people, including our young people, to try and turn them away from hate. But it's also bluntly about prosecuting people who commit acts of violence and hate towards others because of who they are, showing there'll be consequences. I think Mamdani understands this. I think he understands it as a Muslim who's seen the hate directed towards Muslims in our city. I think he feels a great affinity, actually, for the Jewish community because of what they've suffered. And it's important they just aggressively and immediately address any incident that occurs. I think he knows that's his job.
Mr. Mayor, last question. As you know, there is style in politics and then there's substance. Before this meeting, the cloud over the future of New York City was, would President Trump use whatever powers he could exercise to delay or stop entirely federal funds flowing to the city of New York? After the stylistic presentation today, do you believe that substantive cloud has been removed?
No, I don't. I think this was helpful. It took the edge off, perhaps. It's good to have an open line of communication. I don't think it changed the reality. Donald Trump changes his mind constantly. It depends on what you had for breakfast. He is going to, at any given moment, go back to his bellicose ways towards New York City. In fact, he tried the same thing with me. He tried to cut off our security funding because of sanctuary city status. And we beat him in court, and he never was able to. And Mamdani is going to do the same thing. If Trump makes a move on New York City funding, he'll go to court. He'll mobilize the people of our city. He'll fight back. And in the midterms, I also think we're going to see the people of this country decide that Democrats need to run the House, and that's going to undercut every attempt by Trump to take away money from cities and states over politics. So, no, I don't think this ends it one bit. I think it's a fight that's coming, and it's a fight Mamdani's ready for.
Taking a time from a nature hike in beautiful Tucson, former New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio. Mr. Mayor, thank you for your time so very much.
Thank you.
Today, President Trump persisted in his attacks on a group of Democratic lawmakers who released a video urging U.S. military and intelligence community representatives to refuse illegal orders. Here's what the president said during an interview with Fox News Radio.
You're not threatening them. A lot of people are interpreting there's a threat and there's security.
Well, I'm not threatening them, but I think they're in serious trouble. I would say they're in serious trouble. I'm not threatening death, but I think they're in serious trouble. In the old days, it was death.
Joining me now, Mark Montgomery, retired U.S. Rear Admiral with the United States Navy. Sir, it's great to have you with us. I opened my show last night talking about Article 92 of the Uniform Code of Military Justice, about the duty to follow a legal order with a qualifier that you must disobey an illegal order. And I went into some of the definitions on that. For my audience's benefit, try to explain where this debate currently is.
Well, thank you for having me. And, one thing about this debate is it's come out, it's unnecessarily public and kind of polarizing and political, which is the one thing we don't need to be doing with the active duty military. So that part's unfortunate. It is a reasonable discussion to have. If you think an order is illegal, you should, or immoral, you should register your difference with your superior. And then if the order comes down again, then your options are to resign. And I think the six congressmen, those pictures you have up there, kind of stated that. The hard part is determining what's an illegal order. It is these issues that they're dealing with right now aren't clearly cut and dry in a way that I think that makes it, and that introduces the politics into it of, probably the majority of one party thinks it's illegal and the majority of the other party does not.
Right. And that's what the reaction of those Republicans who were asked about it said, well, that video basically tells members of the United States military and the intelligence community who may not be well versed in the technicalities to not follow orders. Is that how you interpreted that video?
Look, they're not in the chain of command, so I didn't interpret it that way. And the kind of officers, the rank of the officers are so, making these decisions and in these positions are, generals, admirals, colonels, lieutenant colonels, majors, and associated Navy ranks. They understand the rules. They didn't need a lecture or a discussion. And so I think I do not believe this has that deleterious effect that the president is worried about. Look, and so therefore, I think, do I think that there are officers that are standing aside or resigning over this? Yes. Both judge advocate generals who are lawyers, I know, have stood aside in some of the combatant commands, and very publicly, it appears that the U.S. Southern Command commander, a four-star Navy admiral, has retired rather than continue to carry out these orders.
You mentioned judge advocate generals, otherwise known as JAGs. Those ranks have been thinned dramatically in the second iteration of the Trump administration. Is that part of this larger context that we should be paying attention to?
Yeah, I think it is. And look, it was unusual when Secretary Hegseth came in. He fired General Brown, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, Admiral Franchetti. She was the chief of naval operations, the vice chief staff of the Air Force, General Schlaffe, and then three judge advocate generals from the Army, Navy, and Air Force, and whose names aren't publicly known and whose opinions aren't known and whose adherence to diversity, equity, inclusivity actions in the past wasn't known. I think they were fired to just clear the decks so they could interview judge advocate generals to find ones whose opinions more match the secretaries. And
is that what judge advocate generals are supposed to do? have opinions that match the defense secretary or that follow the law, international and U.S.?
That's the opposite. And look, almost every career military officer is like, oh, that's lawyers. But the reality is these, especially in these combat situations, these judge advocate generals provide you with the necessary legal context for the action you're about to take. So you want someone who's not a yes man or yes woman. You want someone who has a questioning attitude, brings you the options, and explains to you the gradations of choice in there. So, we have fantastic judge advocate generals. We had fantastic judge advocate generals who were let go for no apparent reason other than they'd been selected by Secretary Hegseth's predecessor. I mean, we know that's the only reason they were let go. And, as a result, Secretary Hegseth has deprived himself of a sounding board for a better understanding of what's legal, what's illegal, what's appropriate, what's inappropriate.
Very important context. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery, thank you very much, sir. I appreciate the time.
Thank you for having me.
Still to come, death in international waters. We were just talking about this. U.S. military campaign against suspected drug vessels continues. Democratic lawmakers have legislation designed to block it. Also, South Carolina Democratic Congressman Jim Clyburn, his new book on the Reconstruction-era lawmakers from South Carolina who preceded him. And in this era of generational change, we'll discuss his own future here in Washington. Plus, nerd alert, 5,000 new words have been added by Merriam-Webster to the 12th edition of its famous collegiate dictionary. The first update in 2 decades. We'll wander with wonder through the words, phrases, and idioms of our time. The Takeout returns in 90 seconds. House Democrats have introduced legislation to block funds for the U.S. military actions in the Caribbean and Pacific and any future attacks in Venezuela. Massachusetts Congressman Seth Moulton has criticized President Trump's actions and said it's time for Congress to step up.
You're watching him orchestrate legally dubious military strikes while sidelining military lawyers and commanders who say that those actions may be illegal and could therefore get you prosecuted for following those orders. But some of us in Congress do intend to stop him.
We'll bring in Charlie Daggett, who comes to us from Puerto Rico. Charlie, tell my audience why you're in Puerto Rico, what you've observed, and what you've learned.
Yeah, Major, let me paint the picture for you. There are roughly 15,000 U.S. forces now currently in this region. When I say this region, I mean the island of Puerto Rico and the seas off the coast. Here in Puerto Rico, we witnessed for ourselves F-35 fighter jets. They've been here for about 6 weeks, taking off. We saw them ourselves, but they're taking off day and night. In addition to that, those Reaper drones that are thought to be responsible for those drug strikes that you just referred to, more than 2 dozen, those are taking off from another airfield in the west of the country, and they're armed with Hellfire missiles. We saw that for ourselves. And to give you an idea of the increase in temperature here, there's been a NOTAM, a notice to airmen, here in Puerto Rico and San Juan, but now also tonight in Venezuela itself, just to give pilots an idea of all the activity here, the military aircraft that are in the air, including B-52s, which we've seen, and F-35s. And we spoke to the Puerto Rican governor about how this island has become a forward operating base. Here's what she had to say.
Why is Puerto Rico so strategically important in this region?
It is not just for our position in the Caribbean. I mean, we are the frontier with Venezuela and United States waters. So that means Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico, we're in the middle. Right. So all waters are crossing with international waters with Venezuela. The most important threat at this time is the drugs. Drugs that continue to enter the island and from here to the United States. And with that money, they're maintaining Maduro's in power.
So as Governor Gonzalez Colon said, this is about drug interdiction, and that's what the Trump administration continues to reiterate. But, Major, we've got a USS Gerald R. Ford aircraft carrier with 4 squadrons of F-18 F-18 fighter jets that are now active, the F-35s, the drones. This is looking a lot bigger than drug interdiction.
Charlie Daggett coming to us from Puerto Rico. Thank you so much, sir. I appreciate it. We'll continue to cover the electric, that's one way to describe it, certainly interesting, very newsy, meeting between President Trump and Mayor-elect of New York City, Zohran Mamdani. And our political panel will have more on several must-see moments. You're watching The Takeout. Here at the family table, our political panel joins me now, Tiffany Smiley and John McCarthy. Tiffany, a Republican strategist and founder of Endeavor PAC. John, Democratic strategist, former senior advisor to President Biden. Okay, I'm going to play you soundbite, that sound on tape, ladies and gentlemen. That's what SOT means. From the thing we opened the show with, because it's still resonating. It will for the entire weekend, I predict. When both Zohran Mamdani, Mayor-elect of New York, and President Trump were asked about their style in politics, and they both addressed it. Listen.
I think both President Trump and I, we are very clear about our positions and our views, and what I really appreciate about the president is that the meeting that we had focused not on places of disagreement, which there are many, and also focused on the shared purpose that we have in serving New Yorkers. And frankly, that is something that could transform the lives of the 8.5 million people who are currently struggling under a cost of living crisis, with 1 in 4 living in poverty. And the meeting came back again and again to what it could look like to lift those New Yorkers out of struggle and start to deliver them a city that they could do more than just struggle to afford it, but actually start to live in it.
And I've been called much worse than a despot, so it's not that insulting. Maybe I think he'll change his mind after we get to working together.
What? I mean, I have watched President Trump for many, many years. I'm not at the building as I used to be, but it is so rare to see him be that forgiving about something so personal. Usually what touches him personally, he not only remembers, but remembers unforgivingly. Tiffany?
Well, I think, Mamdani is obviously the most radical Democrat candidate our country has ever seen. And
not ever seen. As he name-checked in his election night speak, Eugene v. Debs would be right up there, okay?
But mayor-elect of the largest city in our country. And I think, there's probably a lot of people kind of taking a sigh of relief watching this meeting. You think of the financial markets, the real estate developers. There was a lot of people that had anxiety about the future of Mamdani running New York City. So it's refreshing in a sense to see them be able to put their political kind of hats aside and address the policy. And I think more Americans want to see that. They want to see good policy that actually solves problems and makes lives better. And that's what they were addressing. They came together because of a deep love of New York City.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think that we can really sit and believe, though, that this is suddenly a new President Trump and that we're going to have peace and prosperity at home and abroad and love in a bipartisanship kind of way. Yes, and I think that he know what he was doing, and he loves a winner. He wanted to be associated with a winner, and that's really what today was about. Because if you actually look at this in the broader context, right? Earlier this week, we've seen polls out of Fox News saying that Republicans are losing ground on the economy. A couple weeks ago, after the election, we saw that Donald Trump's party basically lost the inroads that they had made with Democratic voters. So Donald Trump is in need of a reset. And I think that he is realizing that the Democratic message that's focusing in on affordability is resonating with people. So he's, I don't know that he's someone who really latches into a hard political construct. He's looking to be with a winner.
Well, Tiffany, from a Republican perspective, because the RNC said it, the National Republican Congressional Campaign Committee has said it, they want to make Zohran Mamdani a kind of avatar for the worst of the Democratic Party nationally. They sort of want to associate anyone who's in any given race in any different congressional district or state, a Zohran Mamdani-like Democrat. Did what the president do or say today in any way undercut that and make that strategy less worthwhile?
I think that's still to be played out, perhaps. But
it certainly created some instability there.
But what he also did is he gave him a platform. Maybe perhaps showing this is the leader of the Democrat Party. The Democrats are so lost and dismantled that now this young green mayor-elect, who is a quote-unquote communist, Trump has called him a communist, is now the leader of the Democrat Party, and that just will not sell across the United States of America to voters. There's another signal that I wonder if President Trump is sort of putting out in this meeting, a signal to Capitol Hill and a signal to Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries that President Trump will work with anyone. That it's really not President Trump who's the problem. he will work with anyone to advance policies and results that actually work. And he showed that today.
John?
And Republicans want to paint the kind of more extreme parts of my party as the base or the leader of the party. But really, if you look at the elections in New Jersey and Virginia and model those out, that's actually probably the best path forward for Democrats. I mean, moderate centrist candidates have proven time and time again that they're able to win in tough places. And that if we're going to be a majority party, is where the party really needs to get back to.
And one of the other lessons, it seemed to me, John, from Virginia and New Jersey, and I'd like your thoughts on this, is you can be anti-Trump, but that can't be your lead item.
No, Democrats need to be for something, not just against it. And one thing that I will say that you could really look at both of these people in the Oval Office today and say, they looked like they were having fun, right? And that's something that I think that everyone's looking for in their public officials now. They want to see someone who's out there and actually enjoying what they're doing.
And Tiffany, part of what Zohran Mamdani's answer was, both of us are very clear in our positions. And it's been my experience covering Trump as a candidate and as president. Whatever you believe, if you know why you believe it, he respects you.
Yes, and I think that's why he invited him to the Oval Office. Mainly, I think, because they love New York City, and Trump does not want to see New York City fall and fail and crash and burn. But it was interesting to me as well, Trump, some of the questions he sort of presented, like, this is an opportunity for you. I think you will do quite well. And in some ways, he could be setting him up. If he crashes and burns, Trump's going to have to come in and save the day. And he's set up perfectly to do that.
John, 30 seconds.
Yeah, I don't know. I certainly agree that the president was teeing this up so that he can walk it back later. I mean, the president views governing as a reality show. And that's really what today was. Again, I don't think that the president is really looking to build common ground in this space. He's looking to kind of associate himself with a winner, and then we'll be probably walking that back.
But
this is the same president.
New York be successful.
Sure. This is the same president, though, who hours before that was talking about the execution of Democratic senators. So, I mean, I don't know that this is like feel-good kumbaya moment in reality.
It may not be. Tiffany Smiley, John McCarthy, one thing we can say for sure, it's Friday. Have a great weekend.
Have a good weekend.
Next, Congressman Jim Clyburn, his new book on South Carolina after the Civil War, the 8 black congressmen who helped shape history there and across our country. That's next here on The Takeout. Welcome back to The Takeout. Thanks for hanging out with us. In 1993, Congressman Jim Clyburn became the 9th African-American from South Carolina to serve in the U.S. House of Representatives. But all 8 who came before him were elected in the 19th century. In his new book, he tells the stories of those 8 members of Congress, Republicans all. It is titled The First 8, A Personal History of the Pioneering Black Congressmen Who Shaped a Nation. I spoke with Clyburn earlier today. Here's some of our conversation. Congressman, great to see you. Thanks for coming in.
Thank you very much for having me.
I want to get to the book, The First 8, in a minute, but I know you go through a process right around Christmas about deciding your future.
Yeah.
I wonder if, with Speaker Emeritus' decision to not seek re-election and the pressure you see building up within the Democratic Party for calls for a younger generation of leadership, you think more profoundly than ever before about not seeking re-election and calling it quits?
No, I stepped out of leadership, and where I stand now is between me and the voters in the 6th Congressional District, and of course my family. And we're going to have the talk, as we always have during the Christmas holidays. We always get together the weekend before Christmas and stay together until New Year's Day. And we reflect on the year, project into the next year. And we'll do that this year as well.
So nothing's different for you in that process?
Absolutely not.
And calls for a new generation and older Democrats stepping aside don't feel heavy on your shoulder?
No, no heavier than it was that I didn't get here until I was 52 years old. Because of the laws that existed in South Carolina at the time. And I tell people all the time, let's make sure we don't get those laws back again and it's looming over.
Do you think come January 2026 we're going to have another government shutdown?
I don't think so.
You don't? Okay.
No. The powers that be see that you have to be very careful how you flex those powers. And people write that the Democrats caved. That's not what Democrats did. Democrats put before the American people exactly what the issues are. And when they saw those issues explained to them, they reacted in Virginia and New Jersey, not in Mississippi and Georgia, in such a way that I'm sure they'll stay away from forcing others.
Do you think Obamacare expanded tax credits are going to be expanded before the end of this year, or do you think people are going to be facing higher insurance premiums starting in 2026?
I don't know if it'll be before, but I'm sure they'll be back. I feel sure.
Republicans are going to give ground on that, is what you're telling me.
Oh, I think so. I think so, because the American people want it.
Doesn't sound like it.
Well, you know, they make a lot of noise, but that's not what this is about. This is about what I call that quiet voter that's listening, watching, reading, and they are going to react to their own selfish benefits.
Excellent. The first 8, I want to say their names.
Please.
Harvey Kane, Robert Brown Elliott, Robert Carlos DeLarge, Alonzo Jacob Renzier, Thomas Ezekiel Miller, Joseph Hayne Rainey, Robert Smalls, George Washington Murray.
Yeah.
Tell me in toto what they represent.
Well, Rainey
we'll get
came
their individual stories, but
they're way down on your list. Where Joseph Rainey was the very first. She's the first African American to be elected to Congress ever. Now, a lot of people look at those senators from Mississippi who came before him, but they were not elected. Senators were appointed by the legislatures back in those days. So Joseph Rainey is very, very important to this process. Of the 8, only 3 were enslaved, and Rainey was one of them. His father bought his family's freedom. Robert Smalls, who I think was the most consequential of all of them, escaped from slavery.
We'll get to him, I guarantee you. And George Washington Murray, also enslaved.
Also enslaved, and he was the only one that was emancipated.
Harvey Kane, Robert Brown Elliott, Northerners.
Northerners, absolutely. Kane came from Ohio after having been born in West Virginia, then went up to New York to pastor and was sent to Charleston to rebuild Emmanuel AME Church. And Robert Brown Elliott was from Massachusetts, and he is kind of interesting because a lot of people studied him and couldn't figure out if he was really an American. He said he was from Massachusetts, so I guess they accepted his word for it.
And then Robert Carlos DeLarge, Alonzo Jacob Renzier, Thomas Ezekiel Miller. Given a name back then that many young Americans don't have any familiarity with at all, maybe are made uncomfortable by, mulattoes.
They were, except for one. Thomas E. Miller was not mulatto.
Okay.
He was white. He had been born white and out of wedlock, given up for adoption, and an African-American family adopted him. So he made the choice to get into this 8. But he lived his life out as an African-American. He eventually went to college, Lincoln University and HBCU in Pennsylvania, where Thurgood Marshall went to school. And then he went back to South Carolina and went to the University of South Carolina Law School and lived in South Carolina.
And the point of the first 8 is they are part of a tapestry of a certain time in American history.
Right.
That you are, with your election as the first Democrat in the House from South Carolina, are linked to, but separated by 95 years?
95 years between number 8 and number 9. And so much of this book is not just about informing people as to who these 8 people were, but to kind of educate people as to why there's 95 years between number 8 and number 9, and why we ought to be very careful as to what is going on today, because it seems to be tracking what happened back in 1876 when we had a presidential election that was thrown into the House of Representatives. We saw taking place here after 2020 much of what took place in 1876.
You can watch our entire conversation on YouTube or listen to it on your favorite podcast platform. A new book hitting the shelves has everything a reader could ask for, and I mean everything. We will discuss the latest edition of the Merriam-Webster Dictionary and some of the new words and phrases in it, like doom scroll, riz, and hard pass. Do not make a hard pass. Stay with us. Welcome back to the Takeout. Welcome to the Conversation Corner. You know, sometime next year, maybe early on, we might have a Nerd Alert graphic and sound, because this is a Nerd Alert segment, and I love Nerd Alert segments because I'm a nerd. First time in more than 2 decades, there is a new hard copy update to the Merriam-Webster dictionary. It adds more than 5,000 new words and phrases. I want to bring in Peter Sokolowski. He is the editor-at-large at Merriam-Webster. Peter, what a pleasure to have you here.
It's a treat for me. Thank you.
And this must be one of the greatest jobs ever.
Oh, it's a fun job if you love words.
Right.
You know? Yeah, absolutely.
And I love words. Tell me about how do new words, idioms, phrases make it from here to there?
Right. The job is research. The job is revision. Because a new sense to an existing word might be part of what we find. We scour text. If something is used by many people, if it's used in print, for example, many times, we will clock it, we will notice it, we will seek citations, what we call them citations, evidence of their use, and especially evidence of their use in very big publications, which means a broad audience is intended for that word. The editors and the writers think that their readers should know this word or will know this word. And then there's the linguistic white gloves. Is the word in quotes? Is it explained in parentheses or is it in italics? Once we see those things come off, that means people think this is a word that a fluent speaker will know. That's the moment it goes in the dictionary.
So hard pass, we mentioned that going to break. Cold brew is one of them. Riz, how do they show up?
And farm to table. What happens is a lot of these might be initially texting or social media kinds of terminology, or the kind of the crunching, like, am I right? You know, when the sort of, or LOL, but I mean, there's a lot of that. But it gets transcribed, and it gets written, it gets published. It might be in the New York Times or the Washington Post. And you see those things transcribed, and it really printed, published writing is the gold standard for us, because we need to see the evidence in order to assess it. So it's not just spoken slang, because that moves into print. And once it's in print, then it goes to the dictionary. So we're a little bit of a lag indicator of the language, and we're looking in the rearview mirror. We need to report the facts, which means we need to assemble them.
And they need to be sticky. So something that's jargony that only lasts for a year doesn't have the stickiness quality that ends up here.
That's right. And it's absolutely true. Words come and words go. And so the fact is, we've always tried to be the record of the current active vocabulary of American English. And active is the key word. You know, is the word really in use? Is it just a fad? Is it just, you know, or is it connected to a movie or to something that will go away?
Is there any 1 or 2 or 3 phrases, idioms, or words that you like most that have been added?
I love the word petrichor, which is new to this. Do you know that word?
I do not.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's a word that's been floating around in my life for a couple of decades, and I always used to think...
What's it mean?
Petrichor is the smell of the earth after rain. So the smell that you just, or sometimes you step out on a city street on a summer night and it's rain that has a distinctive odor, and there's a chemical process, and that is a distinctive nameable odor, and petrichor is the name with the CH, petrichor. And I always used to think it was a kind of a false word, because it was always the answer to the question, did you know we have a word for this smell? But now I see that word used in fluent writing and in fluent speech without explanation, and it's a word.
And I'm gathering it can be modified. There could be an urban petrichor and a rural petrichor.
And you know, because we've lived it, and it's a name for a real thing.
And what's Riz?
Riz charisma. I mean, it's sort of a short part of...
That's why I don't know anything about it. Yeah. And did we need cold brew?
Well, yes, because, I mean, a cold brew is not... If you look up cold and you look up brew, you don't get the sum of those parts.
The fusion.
It's like dad bod or dad joke, which are also new to this edition.
I know something about dad jokes. I know nothing about the dad bod. Peter Sokolowski, so great to have you. Merriam-Webster Collegiate Dictionary. I'm a nerd. I love it. Happy Friday, everyone. This is The Takeout. Relentlessly curious, reliably civil, occasionally clever. Lots of great words there. The Daily Report coming up next.